How are you guys doing? Today is Saturday, January 1st, 2022. I'm James Sims, and for this episode of The Elite, I'm going to review the Elite matchups and performances that took place on yesterday, Friday, December 31st, 2021. And to get a quick sense of where we are at the top of the 2022 years, we take a step back. We are in the midst of football, or we are towards the ends of football seasons. As we look into college, we are still in the midst of bowl games as team seasons are coming to an end day by day. And as we look at the college football national championship, the amount of teams competing for the title has dropped down from 4 to 2, as the national championship game will be played on January 10th. In the NFL, there are still 2 weeks of regular season football left until they get to the playoffs before they shorten the amount of teams from 13 to 4 or from 32 to 14 as they cut 18 teams out. And then, not to mention that we are still in the midst of basketball season as both college and pro are approaching their midway points to their seasons. And since we are at the beginning of the 2022 year, we are officially in the second half of the soccer season for this year. So with that said, I'm first going to dive into what went down with college football yesterday, looking at the ranked opponents, starting with the top-ranked team in the nation, Alabama. They would face off against the fourth-ranked Cincy Bearcats, who came into this matchup after winning the American Conference. Cincy came in with an undefeated 13-0 record. Alabama came in 12-1 after their lone loss came to, I want to say, let me check. Alabama actually got their first loss against Texas A&M when they were unranked in the season by a touchdown. But Alabama will go on to beat Cincy 27-6. They outscored the Bearcats 17-3 in the first half before outscoring them 10-3 in the second. On the losing end of this matchup, the fourth-ranked Cincy Bearcats were led by their starting quarterback Desmond Ridder. He threw for 144 yards on the day. Their leading rusher Jerome Ford had 77 yards on the ground and 11 yards through the air. That's 88 total yards of offense. On the defensive side of the ball, their leading tackler was Darian Beavers. He finished with 10 total tackles and one of the team's sacks. Brian Cook would finish with 9 tackles as he had the team's lone interception. On the winning end of this matchup, the first-ranked Alabama Crimson Tide were led by their starting quarterback, Bryce Young. Bryce Young threw for 181 yards, 3 touchdowns, and an interception, as he also ran for 12 yards. He had 193 total yards of offense. Their leading rusher, Brian Robinson Jr., had 26 carries for 204 yards on the ground. And their leading receiver, Ja'Cory Brooks, had 4 receptions for 66 yards, as he had one of the team's 3 receiving touchdowns. On the defensive side of the ball, Brian Branch led the team in tackles. He had 8 of them. He had half of a sack. Will Anderson Jr. would finish with 6 tackles as he had 2 sacks for himself. The entire Alabama team would combine for 6 sacks total. And with this win, the first-ranked Alabama Crimson Tide will advance to the National College Football Championship. And they will go on to face off against Georgia because third-ranked Georgia will go on to beat second-ranked Michigan in the Orange Bowl, as that was the other semifinal matchup. Looking at how this game fared, Georgia would go on to beat Michigan 34-11 as Michigan scored the last touchdown of the game. Georgia was up 34-3 in the fourth quarter at a point. They outscored Michigan 27-3 in the first half, and then Michigan outscored Georgia 8-7 in the second half, but it wouldn't even come close. On the losing end of this matchup, the Michigan Wolverines, the second-ranked team in the nation, the Big Ten champs, were led by their starting quarterback Cade McNamara. He threw for 106 yards and 2 interceptions. Their backup quarterback, J.J. McCarthy, threw for 131 yards and a touchdown. He also ran for 24 yards. He finished with 155 total yards of offense. On the defensive side of the ball, their leading tackler was Josh Ross. He finished with 11 of them. And on the winning end of this matchup, the third-ranked Georgia Bulldogs were led by their starting quarterback, Stetson Bennett. Bennett threw for 319 yards and 3 touchdowns. He also ran for 32 yards. That's 345 total yards of offense. Their leading receiver, James Cook, would finish with 4 receptions for 112 yards and a touchdown. He also had 6 carries for 32 yards on the ground. That's 144 total yards of offense. Their second leading receiver, Jermaine Burton, had 1 57-yard touchdown. Their third leading receiver, Brock Bowers, had 5 receptions for 55 yards as he had a receiving touchdown as well. On the defensive side of the ball, they were led in tackles by Nolan Smith. He had 8 tackles, with one of them being a sack. And then Darion Kendrick will go on to finish with 5 tackles as he had 2 interceptions for himself. With this win, the third-ranked Georgia Bulldogs will face off against the first-ranked Alabama Crimson Tide in the national championship game on January 10th. And of course, with this loss, the second-ranked Michigan Wolverines of the Big Ten will finish their 2021 college football season with a 12-2 record, as they will not be playing in 2022 until their next season starts. Taking a look at other bowl games that took place yesterday, jumping all the way down to see what was going on in the checking out the TaxSlayer Gator Bowl first. The 17th ranked Wake Forest Demon Deacons faced off against the unranked Rutgers Scarlet Knights. Wake Forest would end up beating Rutgers 38-10. They outscored the Scarlet Knights 20-10 in the first half. Then they shut Rutgers out 18-0 in the second half. On the losing end of this matchup, Rutgers was led by their starting quarterback Noah Vedral. He threw for 87 yards and an interception. He also ran for 17. That's 104 total yards of offense. Their leading tackler was Max Melton. He had 6 tackles on the day. Along with Mohamed Toure, he finished with 6 tackles as well, as he had a sack and a half. On the winning end of this matchup, the 17th ranked Wake Forest Demon Deacons were led by their starting quarterback Sam Hartman. Hartman threw for 304 yards and 3 touchdowns. He also ran for 21 yards. That's 325 total yards of offense. Their leading rusher, Justice Ellison, had 9 carries for 59 yards as he had a touchdown on the ground. Their leading receiver, A.T. Perry, had 10 receptions for 127 yards and a receiving touchdown. Brandon Chapman had 2 receptions for 5 yards as he had the other 2 receiving touchdowns. On the defensive side of the ball, Wake Forest was led in tackles by Christian Masterson and Travion Red. They both had 7 tackles to themselves. And then Gavin Holmes and Zion Keith would finish with the team's 2 lone interceptions. With this win, the 17th ranked Wake Forest Demon Deacons out of the ACC will finish their 2021 college football season with an 11-3 record. With this loss, the unranked Rutgers Scarlet Knights will finish their season with a 5-8 record on the season. Last but not least, looking at last night's bowl games, jumping out to the Tony the Tiger Sun Bowl, the unranked Washington State Cougars would face off against the unranked Central Michigan Chippewas. Central Michigan would end up beating Washington State 24-21 after they shut Washington State out 21-0 in the first half. Washington State outscored Central Michigan 21-3 in the second half. As looking at how Washington fared on the losing end, Washington State was led by their starting quarterback, Victor Gabalis. He would throw for 180 yards and 2 touchdowns. Their leading receiver, Lincoln Victor, had 4 receptions for 88 yards as he had a receiving touchdown as well. On the defensive side of the ball, Washington State was led in tackles by Justice Rogers. He had 10 tackles on the day. And Tavion Brown would log the team's lone interception as he had 5 tackles. On the winning end of this matchup, the unranked Central Michigan Chippewas were led by their starting quarterback, Daniel Richardson. Richardson threw for 193 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. He also ran for 3 yards. That's 196 total yards of offense for Central Michigan's quarterback. Their leading rusher, Lou Nichols III, would finish with 28 carries for 120 yards and a touchdown. He also had 2 receptions for 38 yards, so he had 158 total yards of offense. On the defensive end for the Central Michigan Chippewas, they were led in tackles by Troy Brown. He had 11 of them. He even had a sack. Troy Hairston II had 4 tackles as he had a sack and a half. Thomas Incoom finished with 4 tackles as he had a sack and a half as well. With this win, the unranked Central Michigan Chippewas of the Mid-American Conference are now 9-4. With this loss, the unranked Washington State Cougars of the Pac-12 are now 7-6. Taking a look at what is going on with today's matchups, starting with the 5th ranked team in the nation, the Notre Dame Fighting Irish will face off against the 9th ranked Oklahoma State Cowboys in the PlayStation Fiesta Bowl. Taking a look at the All-State Sugar Bowl, the 7th ranked Baylor Bears are going to face off against the 8th ranked Ole Miss Rebels. Taking a look at the 6th ranked team in the nation, the Ohio State Buckeyes are going to face off against the 11th ranked Utah Utes in the Rose Bowl. The Citrus Bowl is going to feature the 15th ranked Iowa Hawkeyes and the 22nd ranked Kentucky Wildcats. And then the Outback Bowl is going to feature the 21st ranked Arkansas Razorbacks and the unranked Penn State Nittany Lions. Taking a very quick look out to what's going on in the world of college basketball, looking at the last ranked matchups of the calendar year. The only ranked team that played yesterday was the 18th ranked Kentucky Wildcats as they hosted the unranked High Point Panthers. Kentucky would beat High Point 92-48. They won this matchup by 44 after they outscored High Point by 18 in the first half and by 26 in the second. On the winning end of this matchup, the Kentucky Wildcats were led in scoring by their starting guard, Kellen Grady, out of Boston. He went on to finish with 23 points and 2 steals in 25 minutes. He would go on to shoot 8 for 12 from the field and 7 for 10 from 3. With this win, the 18th ranked Kentucky Wildcats are 11-2 on the season as they are undefeated at home. With this loss, the unranked High Point Panthers are 6-8. Taking a look at what's going on today in the world of college basketball, the first-ranked Baylor Bears are going to face off against 8th-ranked Iowa State. Taking a look at what's going on with the 6th-ranked team in the nation, the Kansas Jayhawks are going to face off against unranked George Mason. Looking at the 15th-ranked team in the nation, Seton Hall is going to face off against Villanova. Texas is going to face off against West Virginia. Texas is the 17th-ranked team in the nation. And then the 21st-ranked Providence Friars are going to face off against unranked DePaul. So that's how college basketball is shaping out. Taking a look at how the NBA is faring after yesterday's matchup, starting off in Boston. The Boston Celtics hosted the Phoenix Suns, and the Celtics were able to beat the Suns 123-108. They won this matchup by 15 after they outscored the Suns by 12 in the first quarter and by 14 in the second by a combined 26 in the first half. On the losing end of this matchup, the Phoenix Suns were led in scoring by their elite starting shooting guard, Devin Booker, out of Kentucky. He would go on to finish with 22 points, 6 rebounds, 4 assists, and 2 steals in 38 minutes. He shot 7 for 26 from the field, 1 for 5 from 3, and a perfect 7 for 7 from the foul line. Their starting small forward out of UNC, Cam Johnson, finished with 20 points, 5 rebounds, and 2 steals in 34 minutes. He shot 8 for 15 from the field and 4 for 9 from 3. Their elite starting point guard, Chris Paul, finished with 14 points, 5 rebounds, 8 assists, and 2 steals in 34 minutes. He shot 6 for 15 from the field and 2 for 6 from 3. And on the winning end of this matchup, the Boston Celtics were led in scoring by their starting guards, Marcus Smart and Jaylen Brown. Smart and Brown finished with 24 points each. Smart had 24 points, 9 rebounds, all that in 39 minutes as he shot 10 for 18 from the field and 4 for 5 from the foul line. Jaylen Brown finished with 24 points and 11 rebounds, as well as 6 turnovers in 36 minutes. He shot 8 for 20 from the field and 5 for 6 from the foul line. With this win, the Boston Celtics are now 17-19. That is the 9th best record in the Eastern Conference, as they currently sit a game and a half behind the 8th seed Washington Wizards. With this loss, the Phoenix Suns are now 27-8. That is the 2nd best record in the Western Conference. They sit half a game behind the first place Golden State Warriors in the entire conference. Taking a look at what went down in Indianapolis, the Pacers hosted the Chicago Bulls. The Bulls would end up beating the Pacers 108-106. The Bulls won this matchup by 2 thanks to a game-winning 3 made by DeMar DeRozan in the final seconds. On the losing end of this matchup, the Indiana Pacers were led in scoring by their starting shooting guard, Caris LeVert, out of Michigan. Caris LeVert finished with 27 points, 6 rebounds, and 6 assists in 37 minutes. He shot 11 for 22 from the field, and alongside him, their starting power forward, Domantas Sabonis, finished with 24 points, 14 rebounds, 6 assists, and 2 blocks in 40 minutes. He shot 8 for 14 from the field, 1 for 2 from 3, and 7 for 8 from the foul line. On the winning end of this matchup, the Chicago Bulls were led in scoring by their starting small forward, DeMar DeRozan. DeRozan finished with 28 points, 3 rebounds, 6 assists, and 3 steals in 35 minutes. He shot 8 for 24 from the field and 11 for 12 from the foul line. Their starting point guard out of UNC, Kobe White, finished with 24 points and 3 steals in 33 minutes. He shot 7 for 11 from the field. He shot 6 for 7 from 3, and he shot 4 for 5 from the foul line. With this win, the Chicago Bulls are now 23-10. That is currently the best record in the Eastern Conference, as they are currently tied with the Brooklyn Nets, as they both sit a game over the 3rd place Milwaukee Bucks. With this loss, the Indiana Pacers are 14-22. That is the 3rd worst record in the Eastern Conference. They currently sit 4.5 games behind the 8th place Washington Wizards, and they sit 10.5 games behind the 1st place Chicago Bulls and Brooklyn Nets in the Eastern Conference. Taking a look now at what went down in Sacramento, the Sacramento Kings hosted the Dallas Mavericks. The Mavericks would end up beating the Kings 112-96. The Mavs won this matchup by 16 after they outscored the Kings by 11 in the second quarter and by 12 in the third by a combined 23 in the middle quarters. On the losing end of this matchup, the Kings were led in scoring by their starting point guard Tyrese Halliburton. He finished with 17 points and 10 assists in 33 minutes. He shot 6 for 10 from the field, 4 for 5 from 3, and 1 for 2 from the foul line. On the winning end of this matchup, the Dallas Mavericks were led in scoring by their starting center Kristaps Porzingis. Porzingis finished with 24 points, 9 rebounds, 6 assists, and 2 blocks in 33 minutes. He shot 8 for 12 from the field, 2 for 4 from 3, and 6 for 7 from the foul line. Their starting point guard Jalen Brunson finished with 23 points, 5 rebounds, and 8 assists in 35 minutes. He shot 11 for 19 from the field and 1 for 2 from 3. With this win, the Dallas Mavericks are now 17-18. That is the 8th best record in the Western Conference. They are currently sitting 10.5 games behind the first place Golden State Warriors in the conference. On the losing end, the Sacramento Kings are now 15-22. That is the 5th worst record in the Western Conference. They currently sit 3 games behind the Mavericks for the 8th spot in the East, and they sit 13.5 games behind the Golden State Warriors for the best record in the entire conference. Taking a look at what went down in Houston, the Rockets hosted the Miami Heat. The Heat would end up beating the Rockets 120-110. The Heat would win this matchup by 10 after they outscored the Rockets by 11 in the first quarter. On the losing end of this matchup, the Rockets were led in scoring by their small forward off the bench, Jae'Sean Tate. He finished with 22 points and 7 rebounds, as well as 2 steals in 25 minutes. He shot 9 for 15 from the field. He shot 2 for 3 from 3 and a perfect 2 for 2 from the line. On the winning end of this matchup, the Miami Heat were led in scoring by their elite starting small forward out of Marquette, Jimmy Butler. Butler finished with 37 points and 2 assists, as well as 2 blocks in 35 minutes. He shot 12 for 21 from the field, 2 for 3 from 3, and he shot a perfect 11 for 11 from the foul line. With this win, the Miami Heat are 23-13. That is the 4th best record in the Eastern Conference. They now sit a game and a half behind the Chicago Bulls and the Brooklyn Nets in the East. With this loss, the Houston Rockets are now 10-26. That is the worst record in the Western Conference. They currently are sitting 7.5 games behind the 8th place Dallas Mavericks, and they are currently trailing the first place Golden State Warriors by a whole 18 games in the conference. Taking a look at what went down in Cleveland, the Cavaliers hosted the Atlanta Hawks. The Hawks would end up beating the Cavaliers 121-118. The Hawks won this matchup by 3 after they outscored the Cavaliers by 18 points in the third quarter. On the losing end of this matchup, the Cleveland Cavaliers were led in scoring by their power forward off the bench, Kevin Love, out of UCLA. He finished with 35 points, 11 rebounds, and 4 assists in 30 minutes as he shot 10 for 18 from the field, 7 for 14 from 3, and 8 for 10 from the foul line. Their starting center out of Texas, Jared Allen, finished with 21 points, 8 rebounds, and 3 blocks in 37 minutes as he shot 9 for 11 from the field. And on the winning end of this matchup, the Atlanta Hawks were led in scoring by their elite starting point guard out of Oklahoma, Trae Young. Young finished with 35 points, 4 rebounds, and 11 assists in 42 minutes. Young shot 11 for 28 from the field, 5 for 12 from 3, and he would shoot 8 for 10 from the foul line. With this win, the Atlanta Hawks are now 16-19. That is the 4th worst record in the Eastern Conference. They currently trail the Washington Wizards for that 8th place spot by 2 games, and they currently trail the Chicago Bulls and Brooklyn Nets by 8 games for the best record in the Eastern Conference. On the losing end of this matchup, the Cleveland Cavaliers are 20-16. That is the 4th best record in the East. They sit 4.5 games behind the Chicago Bulls and the Brooklyn Nets for the best record in the conference. Jumping out north of the border, the Toronto Raptors hosted the LA Clippers, and the Raptors would finish their 2021 with a win. They beat the Clippers 116-108. They won this matchup by 8 after they outscored the Clippers by 13 in the fourth quarter to overcome their 5-point deficit going into the fourth quarter. On the losing end of this matchup, the LA Clippers were led in scoring by their starting small forward, Marcus Morris Sr. He finished with 20 points and 6 rebounds in 38 minutes. He shot 7 for 16 from the field and a perfect 4 for 4 from the line. On the winning end, the Toronto Raptors were led in scoring by their starting shooting guard Fred VanVleet. He finished with 31 points, 9 assists, and 2 steals in 39 minutes. He shot 10 for 27 from the field, 4 for 13 from 3, and he shot 7 for 8 from the foul line. Their starting small forward out of Indiana, OG Anunoby, finished with 26 points, 6 rebounds, and 4 steals in 36 minutes. He shot 8 for 16 from the field, 3 for 7 from 3, and 7 for 8 from the foul line. Their starting power forward, Pascal Siakam, finished with 25 points, 19 rebounds, 7 assists, 2 steals, and 2 blocks in 40 minutes. He shot 10 for 20 from the field, 1 for 2 from 3. With this win, the Toronto Raptors are now 15-17. That is the 5th worst record in the Eastern Conference, as they now sit a game and a half behind the 8th place Washington Wizards for a playoff spot, and they are currently sitting 7.5 games behind the Chicago Bulls and the Brooklyn Nets, who currently sit on top of the East. With this loss, the LA Clippers are 18-18. That is the 6th best record in the Western Conference. They now sit 10 games behind the Golden State Warriors for the best record in the Western side. I'm jumping out to Memphis. The Memphis Grizzlies hosted the San Antonio Spurs. The Grizzlies would end up beating the Spurs 118-105. The Grizzlies won this matchup by 13 after they outscored the Spurs by 11 in the second half. On the losing end of this matchup, the Spurs were led in scoring by their starting center, Jakob Poeltl, their starting point guard, Derek White, and then their shooting guard off the bench, Bryn Forbes. Poeltl finished with 15 points, 7 rebounds, and 2 blocks in 24 minutes as he shot 7 for 12 from the field. Derek White finished with 15 points and 9 assists as well as 2 blocks in 24 minutes. He shot 5 for 11 from the field, 2 for 4 from 3, and 3 for 4 from the foul line. Bryn Forbes had 15 points in 20 minutes as he shot 4 for 8 from the field, 2 for 4 from 3, and 5 for 6 from the foul line. The Grizzlies were led in scoring by their elite starting point guard, Ja Morant. He finished with 30 points, 6 rebounds, and 8 assists in 32 minutes. He shot 12 for 18 from the field, a perfect 3 for 3 from 3, and a perfect 3 for 3 from the foul line. With this win, the Memphis Grizzlies are 23-14. That is the 4th best record in the Western Conference, as they've won their last 4 games. They sit 5.5 games behind the Golden State Warriors for the best record in the conference. With this loss, the San Antonio Spurs are now 14-20, as they've lost 5 of their last 10. They've lost their last 2. That is the 10th best record in the West. They trail the Mavericks by 2.5 games for the 8th spot in the conference. Taking a look at what went down in Oklahoma City, the Thunder hosted the Knicks. The Thunder would beat the Knicks 95-80. They won this matchup by 15. They went on to outscore the Knicks by 13 points in the second half. On the losing end of this matchup, the Knicks were led in scoring by their starting shooting guard out of Duke, RJ Barrett. He finished with 26 points, 7 rebounds, and 2 steals in 36 minutes. He shot 10 for 20 from the field. And on the winning end of this matchup, the OKC Thunder were led in scoring by their starting point guard, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. He finished with 23 points and 2 steals in 35 minutes as he shot 9 for 24 from the field and 3 for 4 from the foul line. With this win, the Oklahoma City Thunder are now 13-22. That is the 4th worst record in the Western Conference, as they now sit 4 games behind the 8th seed Dallas Mavericks, as the Thunder have won 5 of their last 10. With this loss, the New York Knicks are 17-19. They are tied with the Boston Celtics for the 9th best record in the Eastern Conference. They both sit a game and a half behind the 8th seed Washington Wizards at the moment. Taking a look at what went down in Salt Lake City, the Utah Jazz hosted the Minnesota Timberwolves. The Jazz would beat the Timberwolves 120-108. They won this matchup by 12 after they outscored the Timberwolves by 13 in the final quarter to overcome their 1-point deficit. On the losing end, the Timberwolves were led in scoring by their elite starting small forward, Anthony Edwards, out of Georgia. He finished with 26 points, 3 rebounds, and 2 assists in 32 minutes. He shot 9 for 21 from the field, 4 for 10 from 3, and 4 for 5 from the foul line. Their starting shooting guard, Malik Beasley, finished with 22 points in 31 minutes as he shot 8 for 16 from the field and 6 for 14 from 3. On the winning end of this matchup, the Utah Jazz were led in scoring by their elite starting shooting guard, Donovan Mitchell. He finished with 39 points as well as 6 rebounds and 5 assists in 38 minutes. He shot 12 for 21 from the field, 6 for 11 from 3, and 9 for 10 from the foul line. Their small forward, Bojan Bogdanovic, finished with 24 points, 12 rebounds, and 5 turnovers in 34 minutes. He shot 6 for 14 from the field, 3 for 6 from 3, and a perfect 9 for 9 from the foul line. Their point guard off the bench, former NBA Sixth Man of the Year, Jordan Clarkson, finished with 20 points in 31 minutes. He shot 8 for 18 from the field. And then their elite starting center, Rudy Gobert, finished with 14 points, 16 rebounds, and 4 blocks in 36 minutes. He shot 3 for 7 from the field. With this win, the Utah Jazz are now 26-9. That is the third best record in the West. They've won their last 6 games. They have the longest active winning streak in the Western Conference, and they are tied with the Bulls for the longest active winning streak in the NBA. They've won 8 of their last 10, and they now trail the Golden State Warriors by a game and a half in the conference. With this loss, the Minnesota Timberwolves are 16-19. That is the 9th best record in the Western Conference. They sit a game behind the 8th seed Dallas Mavericks for the time being. And just to give that is what the NBA is looking like. But last but not least, jumping out to Los Angeles, the LA Lakers hosted the Portland Trailblazers. The Lakers were able to beat the Trailblazers 139-106. They won this matchup by 33 after they outscored the Trailblazers by 15 in the first quarter. And then they went on to outscore them by 18 in the second half. On the losing end of this matchup, the Portland Trailblazers were led in scoring by their shooting guard off the bench, Ben McLemore. He finished with 28 points in 30 minutes as he shot 9 for 22 from the field, 6 for 14 from 3, and a perfect 4 for 4 from the foul line. The Trailblazers' elite starting point guard, Damian Lillard, finished with 18 points, 4 rebounds, and 7 assists in 32 minutes. Lillard shot 5 for 15 from the field, 1 for 8 from 3, and 7 for 9 from the foul line. On the winning end of this matchup, the LA Lakers were led in scoring by their goated starting shooting guard, or small forward, LeBron James. He finished with 43 points, 14 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 steals, and 2 blocks in 29 minutes. He shot 16 for 26 from the field, 5 for 10 from 3, and he shot 6 for 9 from the foul line. Also, their elite starting point guard, Russell Westbrook, the NBA's all-time leader in triple-doubles, would add to his tally. He finished with 15 points, 13 rebounds, 12 assists, and 2 steals in 30 minutes. He shot 5 for 10 from the field and 5 for 6 from the foul line to end the 2021 calendar year. With this win, the Los Angeles Lakers are now 18-19. That is the 7th best record in the Western Conference, as they now trail the Golden State Warriors by 10.5 games for the best record. With this loss, the Portland Trailblazers are now 13-22. That is the 2nd worst record in the West, as they are tied with the Pelicans and the Thunder. They now trail the Dallas Mavericks by 4 games in the conference for that 8th seed. So this is what the NBA looks like as we approach today, and because there were no really big soccer matches, that's really all I have for you. But I want to thank ESPN, the NCAA, the FIFA, NBA, and NFL websites for giving me all the facts and figures that I need. And of course, once all of today's exhibitions and matchups are done, I will come back tomorrow on Sunday, January 2nd for another episode. So until then, thanks for listening. I hope all is well, and I'll catch you with more episodes today, and I'll catch you with another daily episode tomorrow. Peace out.